Clear prop.
Well, the title sort of gives this one away. No surprises here. I did something I've talked about for years but never thought I'd actually have the chance to do. I flew my Cessna 172 into Chicago O'Hare VFR in the middle of the day. Here are some highlights. This was a rather windy day, which would both help and hurt me.
Madison Airport Information, India, 1453 Zulu, wind 330 at 11, gust 19er.
I had a meeting after this flight, and I didn't really appreciate the headwind on my return leg making me late for it. I can't really blame that alone, but this video isn't about being on time for meetings. With the forecast winds, I knew O'Hare would be using the 27 and 28 runways, so I started flying east from Madison to Milwaukee, then south along the lakeshore where I'd be perfectly set up for an approach to any of them. I was able to take advantage of the wind's shifting direction at higher altitude by flying my first leg at 5,500 feet, where I had a nice tailwind of around 20 knots.
With information, India request a VFR departure eastbound at 5,500 to Chicago via the lakeshore.
I knew the landing at O'Hare would be a bit sporty, but the wind would be nearly in line with any of the 27 or 28 runways. It was within my personal limits, if only just, and I'd flown just a few days earlier in similar conditions and felt perfectly comfortable on that flight.
Maintain VFR at or below 3,000, departure frequency 120.1, squawk 0474, Skyhawk 5757 Tango. Okay.
Scout 5 Century, back correct.
Madison Tower, Skyhawk 5757 Tango, ready for departure, runway 32.
Scout 5757 Tango, Madison Tower, wind 340 at 16, gust 21. Turn right heading 060, runway 32, clear for takeoff.
The wind announced with my takeoff clearance was greater than what I had heard in ATIS, but the gust speed was lower, so the takeoff wouldn't be too eventful, though it would be short. I realized here I had forgotten to turn on the camera mounted on the airplane's wing, but I made the right decision and ignored that and performed the takeoff without any footage from it.
I forgot to turn on the wing camera, but now is not the time for that.
It doesn't matter anyway, really. I've done plenty of takeoffs here, and I'll have plenty of opportunities to get more footage of them with my new camera.
Trim.
2244 Tower, Madison Tower, wind 340 at 16, gust 21, runway 32, clear to land.
32, clear to land.
That was confirmed as the right decision as soon as I heard that landing clearance.
Alright, takeoff power. Good for Romeo fuel oil pressure.
With the wind, I barely managed to complete my takeoff callouts before I was airborne.
Juliet, Oxford Tango, direct, maintain 5,000, expect 11,000, 10 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 120.1, squawk 4364.
Positive right, clear of obstacles.
Clear to engage radar vectors Rockford, Juliet, direct, climbing to 5, 11 and 10, 20.1, 4364, Romeo.
I thought Milwaukee would be a good place to turn on the wing camera. I know a few people who live there and figured they might enjoy seeing some footage of their home city, plus it just looks cool. I chose Timmerman Airport as the location to do this. Passing Timmerman, I would open an app on my phone, turn the camera on, and start recording.
And let's turn on the wing camera.
It's tough to make out on the screen in this video, but the camera fails to respond. One of my biggest takeaways from the rest of this flight is that I need to spend less time focusing on camera work while flying. A friend of mine, when talking to me about cooking and preparing steak, told me the single most important thing is to start with a good cut of meat. You can do a few things to improve a bad one, but it will never truly be good. I think the same is true of these flying videos. All the production work after the fact or even in flight will not result in a good video if the flight itself is bad, and this flight was flirting with that because I spent too much time trying to get the camera to work. Furthermore, sloppy flying is simply dangerous. At first I thought this was because it was too cold. At this altitude it was below freezing and the camera might not power on at low temperatures, so I asked for a descent of 1,000 feet when I turned southbound. That ultimately didn't help. As I approached the Class Bravo airspace and O'Hare, I descended to 2,500 feet in a few more steps, trying again with each one, and still the camera didn't respond. Even on approach to the runway I was fiddling with it. Fortunately, I didn't get burned by any of this, but I didn't hold heading or altitude with nearly the precision I should have, and I certainly could be on a future flight. So the next time this happens, I'll just accept that I've lost some footage. Further demonstrating the unimportance of my attempts to revive the wing camera, I realized I was able to angle the in-cockpit camera along the shoreline by swinging forward the sunshade to which it was attached. Here you can also see the outside air temperature showing right around freezing, less than 5,000 feet above the ground, which was unexpected for a day where surface temperatures were in the mid-60s Fahrenheit or around 20 Celsius. I did look up the winds and temperatures aloft before this flight though, so I have no real excuse for not expecting that. I've uploaded another video showing just the flight along the Milwaukee shoreline. It's fun to watch, but it does take a while, and flying by Milwaukee was not the highlight of this flight. Here I'm flying past General Mitchell International. I've flown from this airport as an airline passenger many times, but I've only landed my own airplane there once, to get my stamp for the Fly Wisconsin Passport program. The controllers were very nice and welcoming, as were the signature staff, and they didn't even charge me for the experience. I didn't have the camera rolling for my initial contact with Chicago, which I realize now was a mistake. And I lost some audio as well, restarting my phone to see if that would make it connect with the wing camera. After the Milwaukee approach controller handed me off to Chicago, the new controller asked my destination, and I requested a touch-and-go or low approach at O'Hare if it wouldn't be too much trouble. I was vectored out over the lake a bit, and now have been vectored back towards shore. My friend Gil did a near-identical flight recently, and has an excellent video with uncut audio the entire time he's talking to Chicago approach, and his experience was rather similar to mine. If you'd like to hear more of what the conversation with Chicago approach was like, I recommend watching his video. I'll repeat here one thing he mentioned. The controllers are doing you a favor, letting you land somewhere you normally can't and certainly don't have to, so please be courteous if you attempt the same thing. As I mentioned earlier, you can see me still fiddling with the camera application here where I really shouldn't be. This airspace is tremendously busy. I believe at this point in the flight I was already in the Bravo airspace, which gives me some protection by separating me from anyone who hasn't been cleared into it, as well as constant surveillance from controllers, but this is still not the time to be messing with a camera.
Number 57 Tango, do you got the airport in sight? Affirmative, 5757 Tango. 5757 Tango, make straight in runway 27 left. Straight in runway 27 left, 57 Tango. Runway 4152 Chicago. Tango, you are going to have traffic lining 28 center. Roger, 57 Tango, would you like me to go higher or lower for that? Negative, just don't go through the localizer because the traffic will probably meet up with you here. He's about 15 miles east of you, but he's going quite a bit faster.
I watched Gil's video before this to get a better idea what I should expect, and he was also assigned 27 left, so I thought I might be able to expect that. However, I was a bit confused by the last instruction as I had mistaken 28 left for 27 left on the airport diagram, and thought there was no way for me to get to the runway without going through the 28 center localizer, but I cleared up my confusion by pulling the diagram up on my tablet after this instruction. This is why it really pays to plan ahead when flying into large airports like this. If I hadn't been so prepared, trying to avoid the 28 center localizer may have been a challenge. To further help my cause, I had already tuned the 27 left localizer frequency into my nav radio and set the course selector on my HSI to its final approach course of 273 degrees.
Left on 10.5. India Alpha Charlie. Good. Checks out.
I've just verified the frequency and identifier for the runway 27 left localizer from the ILS runway 27 left approach chart, and I'm beginning my gradual turn to line up with the final approach course. I do this by turning the airplane to keep the GPS ground track line touching the head of the course deviation indicator as it moves into center on the Garmin G5 HSI. This is just one of many ways even a G5 without GPS navigation simplifies instrument flying, and in this case even VFR navigation. Without that, I'd be guessing at what heading would give me an appropriate intercept angle, and what would keep me on centerline until I was close enough to the airport to see which runway was 27 left. The wind reported by ATIS was 290 at 12 gusting to 23 knots, but in actuality I think it was coming more from the north. The crosswind felt a lot stronger than the 4 to 7 knot component that would suggest, and would have made tracking a localizer this far out challenging without the GPS ground track provided by the G5.
Tango, what's your plan after this?
I'll be departing to the west, 5757 Tango.
Or 57 Tango, contact tower now 126.9 or 26.9.
126.9 or Skyhawk 5757 Tango. Okay, 14.4. Oh no, honey.
Got 5757 Tango, air tower 132016, runway 27 left, clear to land.
Clear to land, runway 27 left, 5757 Tango.
And that confirms my suspicions about the wind.
Did you want to land or do you want to low pass November 57 Tango?
I'll do a full stop, 57 Tango.
November 57 Tango, roger.
About here it hit me just how surreal this was.
861 verify you will remain clear of all runways? We will remain clear of all runways. 861 roger.
Okay, gas, both. Undercarriage down and bolted. Mixture rich. Jeepers.
It's tough to see how much turbulence there is, but it felt like someone hit the bottom of my seat with a sledgehammer just there.
Carpy on. Don't go high here. Don't make yourself go around right now. It'd be real embarrassing on a runway this long. Okay, there's one red. I'm still going real fast here. Okay, now I'm below flaps speed. Flaps 10 degrees. Belts tight. Got 2 red, 2 white.
The heck was that? Inner marker? Ooh, that's a lot of crosswind.
There, tower, Envoy 3572, tab, inbound 27 left.
Envoy 3572, over tower, wind 31016, gust 26, runway 27 left, clear to land.
Clear to land, 27 left, Envoy 3572.
November 5757 Tango, say intentions.
I'd like to stop at signature and adjust my cameras and then depart after stop.
November 57 Tango, roger, turn left at this next turn off here, left on Golf, and hold short of Golf 3.
The next taxiway appears to be Mike, 57 Tango.
November 57 Tango, affirmative, left turn here on the Mike, left turn on the Golf, hold short of Golf 3.
Oh, I see, thank you. Left on Mike, left on Golf, hold short, Golf 3, 5757 Tango.
This is where I could have prepared a little better. I knew there was a chance I'd be stopping at signature. I'd have preferred a touch and go, but I wasn't sure I'd be able to do one.
Alright, well, this is gonna
The
get
GI ramp
expensive.
is clearly labeled on the airport diagram, so I could have had a much better idea where I was on the airport and where I was going, in addition to likely avoiding the confusion between 27 left and 28 left earlier, if I'd studied that more carefully.
I should wait until I'm across the hold short line for that. Chartertown with 3978 is approaching Taft.
Envoy 3978, over tower, wind 31015, gust 26, runway 27 left, clear to land.
Clear to land 27 left, Envoy 3978.
November 57 Tango, continue on Golf, hold short of Papa Papa.
I've realized now I need some better situational awareness, so I've pulled up the airport diagram on my tablet and can see that Papa Papa is at the very end of this taxiway, but there are a lot of turnoffs here and I'm double checking each one to make sure I'm not going somewhere I shouldn't. The phrase concrete jungle comes to mind.
Envoy 3572, turn left at Alpha 1, join Bravo, contact ground on 121.9er.
Alpha 1 Bravo .9 or 3572.
I'm still not sure whether this is where I was supposed to hold short of Papa Papa. I don't see any other hold lines, but this seemed impossibly far away and is also short of Gulf 4. I should have been looking farther ahead here and probably should have asked about it.
I missed that, didn't I? And Tower 57 Tango is holding on Golf. Is it a right or a left on Papa Papa here? Tower 2608 tap.
American 2608, over tower, wind 30018, gust 26, runway 27 left, clear to land, traffic crosses approaching the runway prior to your arrival.
27 left, clear land, American 2608.
To the 861, in a few moments you'll see a prop at Papa Papa. If you could give way to them, please. They're going to taxi to signature ramp. November 57 Tango, turn left on Papa Papa at the approach in, cross runway 27 left, traffic 3 mile final. Vehicles will be given away, taxi to the 6.
861 copy, there will be a prop coming down Papa Papa to signature. Left on Papa Papa, cross 27 left, and traffic inside 5757 Tango.
Envoy 3978, turn left at Alpha 1, join Bravo, contact ground 29er.
Alpha 1 Bravo, ground point 9, you have a good one, I'll return that to you.
I'm surprised.
Tower, runway 4216 approaching, Taos 27 left.
Runway 4216 over tower, 131018, gust 26, runway 27 left, clear to land.
Clear to land, 27 left, runway 4216.
Oh, great.
At this point, I was aware of how much my attention had been divided by the camera work, so I made the right decision and left it in the seat until the airplane was shut down. You going? Oh, hey, now this is working. Oh. Cool. Clear prop! Clear all around. Alright, throttle set 600 RPM. Actually leave the brake on. Oil pressure good. Listen closely to the first thing I'm about to hear on ATIS. It's going to come up.
Runway 3333 over tower, wind 29016, runway 27 left, clear to land.
Expect runway 22 left, 28 right from November 5, 9er south, 750 feet available. Notices to airmen. Runway 4 left, 2 right forward, runway 10 right, 28 left forward. Taxiway Whiskey 12 between taxiway Whiskey 2 and taxiway Whiskey 3. Use caution for men and equipment at numerous sites on the field. Central de-ice facility closed to aircraft de-ice for clearance delivery. Ground metering and ground full contact O'Hare International Airport on frequency 121.9er. Advise on initial contact. You'll have information X-ray. O'Hare International Airport ATIS information X-ray 16510. Wind 270 at 17, up 33.
My personal wind limit is 25 knots, and gust limit is 10. I should have immediately stopped, called my coworkers to let them know I'd be late for the meeting or call in from here, and wait for the wind to die down. But I let myself fall victim to get there itis and pressed on anyway.
AO2, speed wind 28033/165, sea level pressure 146. Arrivals expect vectors visual approach runway 27 left, visual approach runway.
Clear clearance delivery, Skyhawk 5757 Tango with X-ray. Request a VFR departure direct Madison, Mike Sierra, November.
Stand by. What's your call sign again?
Skyhawk 5757 Tango.
Hold on a second. Okay, Cessna 5757 Tango. Now let's see. Can we clear out class level airspace via to the, I think that you're going to head, let's see, southeastbound, correct?
Negative 57 Tango needs to head northwestbound.
Northwestbound, okay. So clear out class level airspace as requested to the northwest. Maintain VFR conditions at below 1,800. And squawk 5146.
Okay, so that was 19 VFR at or below 1,800, cleared to the northwest, and squawk 5757 Tango.
Give me 1 second with your squawk, I might have to change that one.
Roger, 57 Tango.
Here, 5757 Tango, clear out class level airspace to the northwest. Maintain VFR conditions at below 1,800 and squawk 4320.
Was that 4322 or 4320, 57 Tango?
4320.
4320, okay, so maintain VFR at or below 1,800, cleared out of the class Bravo to the northwest, squawk 4320, Skyhawk 5757 Tango.
That's 5757 Tango, read back in correct. Are you ready for a taxi?
Affirmative, 5757 Tango.
Okay, where are you at? Are you at Papa Papa or Tango Tango?
Signature ramp at Papa
Tango from, can you come out Tango Tango, advise when you're at Tango Tango?
Affirmative, 57 Tango.
Thank you. Connie 912, heavy right turn Tango Tango, hold short range 27 left.
And clearance Skyhawk 5757 Tango is at Tango Tango.
Okay, Skyhawk 5757 Tango, give way to Kalita, then use Tango Tango, hold short, 1827 left, expect 1828 right, November 5 for departure.
Here I'm taking a moment to write that all down, so I'm not sure why the following readback is so slow and unsure.
Okay, hold at Tango Tango, give way to the Kalita, and hold short of 27 left, and expect 28 right with that, 5757 Tango.
Skyhawk 5757 Tango, affirmative. You're going to hold short, runway 27 left at Tango Tango, expect runway 28 right, November 5 for departure.
It wasn't until I got home that I realized what she had meant by runway 28 right, November 5 for departure. For a moment I thought she was referring to a standard instrument departure, which wouldn't make any sense for me departing VFR. As soon as I watched the footage, it was obvious. Before I even pulled up the airport diagram to confirm, I realized she was referring to the intersection departure, runway 28 right at November 5, that I should have expected already from listening to ATIS. Since I was only told to expect this, and clearly understood my taxi instructions, I decided I had a while to figure it out, and wouldn't tie up the frequency any longer unless I failed to do so.
There should be about 6,250 feet available.
Yeah, that'll be plenty for me. 57 Tango can take the intersection departure.
Skyhawk 5757 Tango, hold short, runway 27 left at Tango Tango.
Hold short 27 left at Tango Tango, 5757 Tango.
Cessna or Skyhawk 5757 Tango, towers 126.9er.
Tower on 126.9er, Skyhawk 5757 Tango. Thank you very much.
Skyhawk 5757 Tango, tell you ready to depart.
5757 Tango, ready for departure, runway 27 left at Tango Tango.
Skyhawk 5757 Tango, tower, VFR departure to the northwest, maintain at or below 3,500, runway 27 left, you are cleared for takeoff, proceed on course.
Good for takeoff, 27 left, proceed on course, VFR below 3,500, 5757 Tango. Alright, clear to the left, you're clear on final, clear runway.
57 Tango, what heading will that be roughly?
Roughly 320, 57 Tango.
Right.
Heading, trim, mixture, lights. Takeoff power, oil pressure's good. Airspeed is alive. It's a gusty one, so don't get slow. Alright, there's VY. I really hope that wing camera is still recording. This is an amazing view. Holy crap, it's a 727. That's 400 feet. And VY positive right, flaps up, lights to flight mode. $1,600.
Skyhawk 5757 Tango, you can contact Chicago departure frequency 125.0. Have a great day, guys.